Vladimirski. Ryan Weir is half the man he used to be, thankfully.
All right, we're back with another episode of TVT News. Today we've got Alex Lopez, owner of Toma Bloody Mary. And I'm very excited for this episode because I get to have Bloody Mary, right?
Yeah.
We're not leaving here without testing out this product.
That's right. Nice to finally meet you, Ronan.
Pleasure to meet you finally in person.
Welcome, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us about Toma. How did the idea come up? Well, actually, first of all, how do you decide you're going to get into the Bloody Mary business in general? Because that's not something, you know.
No, it's a funny story. Like, I think hands down, Bloody Marys are the most inconsistently made cocktail, period. And despite it being a very popular cocktail, people are like, have a hit or miss sort of experience with it. Yeah. You know, like they either love it or they hate it. And it's like a bad experience when you're at a restaurant, you're having a nice brunch, and then all of a sudden, like, the Bloody Mary kind of misses. So I've always loved brunch, and you know, I started making them at home. Is really when it started. And one of my friends who was a bartender taught me how to make a really good one, and that's where it took off.
Yeah, I remember you making it in your kitchen back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I started taking like a totally different approach. Typically, a Bloody Mary is made with hot sauce.
Okay.
And, you know, obviously tomato, but that's where a lot of like the spice flavor is coming from. And you know what? Like, it didn't really impart the flavor that I was looking for. And so I started toying around with different hot sauces. So I started making a sriracha. And this was like on my own. Like, I started getting into the quality of ingredients that were in the products I was buying. And I love sriracha, and I started making it on my own, and I started saying, all right, why don't I put that in my Bloody Mary? And then I started toying around with some old recipes that I had. One of them was a chipotle tomatillo sauce. Oof. And it was kind of cool. Like, I started thinking about if I were to create a brand around this cocktail, how can I really make it ownable? And so there was this sauce that, you know, my mom had shared with me, and I'm like, this is where the story is going to start. My mom left Cuba in '68 to come to this country, and she went to Mexico first and lived in Mexico City for a year before she can get the paperwork to come into the States. So this chipotle tomatillo sauce kind of represents that story of my mom's journey to the U.S. because it imparts some of those like Mexican flavors that I grew up with. Although being Cuban, growing up in a Cuban household, there were a lot of those sort of types of food that were in my sort of upbringing. Yeah. And so this chipotle tomatillo sauce to me brought so much more than just heat to the cocktail and more flavor, because, you know, it's got, you know, roasted chipotles, some garlic, some salt, and the roasted tomatillos, which totally changed the game for this cocktail, because mostly this is a tomato-based cocktail, and no one was doing the tomatillos and the tomatoes together. And so the flavor profile is so different, right? It still follows the same rubric of a Bloody Mary, but it imparts this sort of tanginess that the tomatillo brings in and a little citrusy note to it, which is, you know, part of the same nightshade family, but it brings in a totally different flavor. And I think that's when it really started to change the game for me, and people really started loving it. Like, people were asking, you know, can you make it for a party? Can you bottle this? And then it became like, you need to put this on the shelf somewhere at a store.
I remember you brought me a sample years ago, and I was like, "Oh man, this is golden."
I mean, like anybody that enjoys a Bloody Mary, I was like, "Here, I make this." You know, how can I get more people to give me feedback on the product if I was going to start to consider, you know, commercializing the recipe, bringing it to stores and restaurants, and really restaurants was the number one channel that I really wanted to start to make a difference in, because I felt like a lot of even more upscale restaurants really didn't care as much about this cocktail. Despite its popularity, there's like, I'm gonna buy a bottled mix and I'm gonna pour it with vodka, stuff it with a ton of garnishes, and that we can talk about because I have a lot of opinions about the garnishes that are put on it. And then there are the other restaurants that batch it. Like, this is a very popular cocktail during a very finite period of time during the weekends on brunch. Everybody's going to brunch. Everybody's ordering a Bloody Mary, and you know they're making batches of this stuff because they can't make it to order.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong. When somebody goes to brunch, now when I go to brunch, you know, obviously I'll have a drink or whatever it is. But when you go and you order a Bloody Mary, do you usually say I'll have Bloody Mary but with this type of mix or with this type of vodka? So usually I just hear people say I'll have a Bloody Mary, and then that's the end of the conversation.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I would say my ultimate goal is for someone to ask for a Toma Bloody Mary.
How do we make that happen?
Someday, well, you know, the first step is awareness and having that on the menu. I was looking at one of our clients, Big Slide Brewery up in Lake Placid.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the volume of Bloody Marys that they were pouring. And I said, wow, these guys are doing a ton of cases. Why is that? So I checked out the website, and this is someone that was brought to, you know, our sales channel through our distributor. So, you know, thank you to Craft Beer Guild New York. So I hadn't met with the owner, right? And they loved it so much. They followed the whole story, right? Craft made in New York. They're also in New York. So they share that story on their menu. And it's in 5 Bloody Marys.
Wow.
They have 3 with vodka, 2 with tequila, and other sort of flavors that they impart into the Bloody Mary to make it their own, right? They use us. But just like the vodka that they label on their Tito's, they're also putting Toma. And so people start to equate that with a quality made Bloody Mary. And then, you know, over time, people are going to start asking for that.
Did you have to ask them to put Toma? Or like if you go into a given restaurant and they're going to carry your product, obviously your goal is to not just have it on the shelf, but for Toma to be on the menu.
Yeah.
Do you have to advocate for that, fight for it? Extra cost associated with that?
Right. So we can't, I mean, we can always ask, right? We can always ask. Yeah, there's a level of involvement in terms of partnership and how much the brand puts behind, you know, supporting that restaurant, helping promote. And we do that all the time. Like, we love to share where you can get a Toma Bloody Mary, right? Because that just brings traffic. Like, people follow us and know the brand, know what it tastes like, and they can go to they know another restaurant they can go to get it, and enjoy it at that restaurant. Then that's awareness for the restaurant. You know, sometimes restaurants are funny. Like, a lot of what they're going to do is they're going to say, we make our own, right? That's the biggest pushback in terms of business. We make our own. Okay, like, is it your top selling cocktail? How many people order one when they come?
Yeah.
Do you want it to be your top selling cocktail?
Restaurant business is crazy.
Right? Do you want them to order a second one?
Yeah.
Right? Do you want them to enjoy? Do you want them to write a review that they had the best Bloody Mary? Because there are Instagram accounts out there that have people that just blog about it, that just follow different brands, follow restaurants, and they say, I had a great experience here, or I didn't. And they rate the different Bloody Marys. Right? We've worked with a lot of them. Now, why is that? Because people love the cocktail. They're often frustrated because it's a hit or miss experience.
It's never consistent.
It's the most inconsistently made cocktail. It doesn't follow a rubric. Like, there's no fast and hard rule to a Bloody Mary these days. There are so many different ways that people make them. Some sort of neglect it, full-heartedly agree. Like,
Yeah.
they just don't care enough to make a great one.
Well, I think I heard you say before they just throw a bunch of stuff in it. So I think a lot of the time you see they'll pour like V8 juice,
Yeah.
with vodka, and then just
man,
put a
that's
bunch
gross.
of they'll put a slice of bacon or grilled shrimp. Just think that'll make up for it.
Right.
But it really doesn't.
Yeah. And look, a good garnish game is always going to create a better experience for the customer. And I believe in a lot of different garnishes that you can put on a cocktail. And a Bloody Mary always tastes better with something that's been brined, or that has fat, right? Like a bacon. The reason that Bloody Marys go so well with sort of fattier foods like brunch is because the balance on your tongue, on your palate, with the acidity and the fat. It's the same reason that wine pairs well with cheese. It's acidic and it's fat,
Yeah.
right? And then so your mouth just kind of starts to party, right? And these flavors really go well together. So the garnishes are great, but the full roasted chicken and cheeseburgers and wings and stuff on top of a Bloody Mary, that's just madness, right? Like there's no need for that.
John Taffer from Bar Rescue would murder somebody, I think,
Yeah.
if he saw that.
Like to me it just hides the elegance of the cocktail, right? Like, I think that this cocktail has sort of two misnomers, right? The hangover cure, which it's not, right?
That's a myth?
That's a myth.
That's
right?
why
Like,
it's never worked, I guess.
like tomato juice is going to comfort your stomach, right? But it's not going to cure a hangover. And we've never been part of that conversation. Like, we've never promoted Toma as a hangover cure. Most people that are going to continue drinking are going to feel better anyway, for that short period of time. Later on, they're not going to.
Because they'll be hungover again.
Right, they'll be hungover again. It's just a great daytime cocktail, and that's really like what we try to communicate. It's a great daytime cocktail. Like, I love brunch, but I don't need to be hungover to have a Bloody Mary. I can have a Bloody Mary at night. Like, I can have a michelada with my tacos at night. A michelada, if you guys aren't familiar, is a beer-based Bloody Mary. It's a Mexican style that has many variations. A michelada or a chelada is just, lime juice, salt, and a, Mexican style lager like Modelo. But then it sort of evolved as the cocktail came to the U.S. and they started adding
Half roasted chicken.
clamato. Clamato juice. So it's like a lighter Bloody Mary, and it's sort of effervescent, and it's got like all the flavors of beer with a little bit of spice, a little savoriness, and it's just, to me, it's going to be like one of the great cocktails this summer.
You didn't bring tacos, did you?
No, I wish I brought tacos.
Got excited there for a
Go
second.
very well with the Bloody Mary.
So in terms of your Bloody Mary,
Yeah.
is there a specific, without playing favorites,
Yeah.
is there a specific vodka or tequila that you would recommend pairing with it more so than another one?
I don't, right? Like, number one, vodka is a neutral-based spirit.
No.
Right? So it's not going to have a lot of flavor. The flavor that's going to stand out the most is going to be the mix.
Okay.
Right? Whatever tomato-based mix you're using. For me, I usually go, gluten-free, although most people will say like a lot of vodkas are gluten-free by the amount of times that you're, distilling it. I like potato vodkas. I think it adds a little bit of flavor to it, but overall, you're not going to get much flavor out of a vodka. Now, I have tequila out there because I think a Bloody Maria is the way to go. It adds a little hint of sweetness and a little oakiness, a little, taste of sort of honey. And with lime juice, it's just killer. We've taken that up like even another notch and like used products like bitters that add a whole other level of flavor. Like, this is a mole bitters, sort of that like chocolate flavor into it. It's just divine.
I think we need to get into this.
Yeah.
I'm ready for a taste test.
I'm excited.
All right, let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
Wait, so the other thing, and we just came off of dry January. A lot of
that?
people are talking about sort of, being a little more mindful of the amount of alcohol that we take in or consume. So we've been working with a number of different brands, one of them being Seedlip, another one called Monday or Drink Monday. One is both are non-alcoholic. Seedlip is actually a distilled non-alcoholic spirit. And so they each impart their own flavor into the cocktail. So we can make one of each, which would be pretty cool.
Let's do it.
Yeah, all right.
I'm ready. All right. So which one are you making first?
All right, so I'm going to make a non-alcoholic Bloody Maria. So this is with Drink Monday or Monday's Mezcal. And then I'm going to use the mild. I know
Okay.
the original is our most popular. 95% of the restaurants that we have use that one. This Mezcal actually has a little bit of a spicy element to it.
Okay.
So I'm going to use the mild.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with 4 ounces of this. One and a half ounces of Monday Mezcal.
Drink making is really an art. It's a skill that I don't particularly possess.
We don't.
Smile when you do that.
Oof.
All right, so this one is for you, buddy.
All right.
Chug, chug, chug.
Just need a taco or some eggs Benedict or something. Go along with it.
Eggs Benny?
Eggs Benny.
I'm gonna pour the rest of them here.
Wow. That's really good. And that spice you're saying is coming from the mezcal?
It's coming from the Mezcal, yeah.
It's very well balanced.
So the second one, with 4 ounces Toma Mild and 1.5 ounces of Oro de Lidia. This is a Blanco tequila.
This is really good.
It's good?
Yeah.
What does it taste like?
Well, I like this also because it's not super chunky or anything. It's just very easy to drink.
Yeah, so our mix is actually intentionally a little bit thicker than most. And that's because we expect the cocktail to be shaken, so first adding the spirit, then shaken with ice and having that break down a little bit. Forgot to add a little bit of lime juice in this one.
Like I feel a lot of them though, you might have it's more like you're sipping out of like a tomato jar or something like
Yeah.
that. This has actually got it's got good viscosity, but it's also just very easy to drink. It's not something that you have to take a gulp of to get it down.
Right, right. There you go, Roman.
Thank you, sir.
I'm gonna make the last one for me.
So do you have a bunch of different ways of making?
Cheers.
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 This is fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can make a Bloody Mary. Obviously, the traditional one with vodka. You can even make it with aquavit, tequila, mezcal, a smoky sort of Bloody Mary. The original actually pairs really nicely with tequila and mezcal. I didn't bring it today, but we also have one that it's called our horseradish. So it has less of that chipotle tomatillo sauce and more horseradish. So it has more of that like traditional Bloody Mary. And that one actually pairs really nicely with gin. So that's called a red snapper.
Mm.
That one's really good too. There's a lot of people that do it with bourbon as well. As a matter of fact, Smokehouse in New Rochelle and in Mamaroneck, they make 3 different Bloody Marys: vodka, tequila, and a bourbon one, and they make it with pickle juice as well. It's like amazing. It's so good.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that one I would recommend trying if you're ever at Smokehouse.
Pickle juice.
So tell me, now you guys are obviously still working your way to get out there as much as you possibly can. Tell me about your branding strategy. How are you trying to get into restaurants and stores? What struggles are you seeing? Tell me about that journey, because I think everybody's interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I first started with restaurants.
Okay.
I had a couple of friends who were in, actually they had friends that were in the restaurant industry, and this is actually before I actually went to my first production. And so they all loved it. And they knew that whatever they were tasting was actually made at home. I couldn't sell it to them yet because I was following what the state had deemed safe to make, but I could not sell it yet. And so they said, if you can make this commercial shelf stable, I'll bring it in. So I already knew, I already had clients that were ready to buy.
Locally.
Okay. Yeah. So I went ahead, and before I even left my job, I did a production run, and I already had clients to sell it to. So we started out with those restaurants, some of which are actually still my clients today, which is pretty wild. And over time, I was focusing on getting into restaurants and in retail. So I was looking at first, what are the specialty markets, local specialty markets that we can get into. And a distributor, saw me doing demos in DeChico's. While I was trying to get into DeChico's, they didn't know the brand as much. They said, all right, do a couple demos in one store in Larchmont, and we'll see how it goes. And I had begged them, multiple times to sell the product. And I had told them one day that I did the Hudson Valley Wine and Food Festival and sold 40 cases in one weekend. And they were like, wow, okay, then do the demo.
Is that the one in Rhinebeck?
That's the one in Rhinebeck, yeah.
I've been there once.
Yeah, that's a really fun
I was probably very drunk
event.
one time, tried your Bloody Mary.
A lot of wine,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
finished with a Bloody Mary. So DeChico's has been one of our greatest partners. We do so much with them now. We started out doing a ton of demos in all of their stores, and getting the word out that we're local, that we're gluten-free, vegan, no added preservatives. That's one of the main things that I wanted to accomplish in developing the product, is that there are no added preservatives. A lot of the products you see on the market, on the shelf at retail stores, have preservatives. And so, we do a hot fill process, which is basically like a more modern canning, where it's heat is involved in pasteurizing it. And they're in beautiful glass bottles, so that we have a long shelf life, and you don't get that chemical flavor. Why should you, drink chemicals in your cocktails? Right. There's no need for it. So people, we're finding that this is a high quality Bloody Mary I can buy on the shelf. So that sort of relationship with DeChico's has grown from when we were with 7 stores, and now they're 10 stores, soon to be 11 stores. And we do a lot of social media promotion with them, as far as around Super Bowl or around National Bloody Mary Day, around the holidays.
Back up a second.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier you were trying to get this product out there, but you still had a full-time job.
That's right.
Where would you mind if I ask where you're working?
Yeah. So I've spent my whole career in marketing.
Okay.
I started out in the ad agency world, working in media planning and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for pretty big companies. My first client was Intel.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. I worked on Connects Toys, Porsche, Shire Pharmaceuticals, and then I went client side. So I was working in the marketing department at the corporation, and then having relationships with ad agencies. So I was working for Chase, Manhattan Bank, at the time, MetLife.
So safe to say you had a pretty full day.
Yeah.
So marketing and ad guy by day, Bloody Mary guy at night. That's and you have a family.
Right.
So how do you balance that? That's a long day.
So part of it was like, anybody that goes through a lot of hard work, a lot of training. I had just come out of finishing my MBA at Fordham University.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was already doing 85 to 90 hours a week with work plus, my classes and studying and all that. So it was that sort of downtime from after graduating that I was like, what do I do with all this time that I now found?
Right.
I had just gotten married while I was in school, and so I didn't have any kids, and I was like, what do I do? And so I started researching for a couple of years, like, how am I going to do this if I actually go and launch it? And then I started saving some extra cash to kind of help me launch the business. And then I decided to take the leap.
And I'm sure your marketing experience was helpful.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I never really worked on a lot of consumer packaged goods, other than I worked on Beck's beer, which was one consumer packaged good. But a lot of the other brands that I worked on were mainly services. Intel is just a chip inside of a computer. The rest were mainly services. So I think, yes, branding, the design of the product, the look and feel of the website, all of our marketing materials, I do all of that. So that was a good thing, a good quality to have, a good skill set to have when launching a CPG brand.
Yeah.
So like once I really started to think about launching it, my son was born. And I made a pact with my wife. She was the one that encouraged me to do it to begin with. She said, I need to excel in the career so that we can support the family. And none of this would be here if it wasn't for her. And fortunately, because I was able to balance sort of figuring out how much I can work in a given day and take care of my son, around school and nursery school pickup and all that kind of stuff, I was the one that was more flexible, right? I'm my own boss. So if I had to give up an hour here to go work another 2 hours at night, I would do that.
Would you agree if I were to say that the key to any successful entrepreneur, any small business owner, is a supportive spouse?
Absolutely. I mean, in sort of an entrepreneurial journey, you're going to hear a lot of people say, right, the naysayers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm my biggest naysayer, which is a hard thing to get through every single day, right? The challenges that you face and like putting yourself down and picking yourself up. Fortunately for me, I haven't had many people tell me I couldn't do it, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, everybody believed that I could do it. And it wasn't some like immensely technological innovation.
Right. It was something you were passionate about.
It's innovative, and I was totally passionate about it. There's an innovative flavor difference in this. And I didn't have any experience in the beverage industry or CPG, but I was able to figure it out.
I think we need to get your wife on a podcast. We need to get her.
You know what? What's cool is that she is also in marketing. I met her when I was working at MetLife. I was working on the international business, and she was working on the U.S. business. And I traveled a lot. I went to China and India numerous times. And having her sort of be my sounding board, as an advisor, like, what do you think about this label? What do you think about this design? I mean, this design was all her, right? Like, I had so many different ideas about what the logo would look like. And, I did have a designer, but I sort of art directed everything. The designer came back with some beautiful designs. And my wife kept gravitating towards what we have today. and said, you know what, like, you talk about who your customer is, this consummate brunch enthusiast, entertainer, right, that wants to have a beautiful brunch at home with family and friends, and that entertainer is going to be mostly a woman. So if you can do something that looks more elegant, that's going to appeal to women as well, I think you have a winner there. And I haven't changed barely a thing about that logo since I started.
Smart woman.
Yeah.
Smart woman.
I think the passion that you also have for Bloody Marys and, wanting to make something just really good, you don't want it just to go everywhere. Like, eventually, yes, but you were very selective when I first met you about where it's going and how it's going to grow.
That's right. I mean, I've been focused on, getting it into New York first. As a matter of fact, we got a distributor in Connecticut first, and then New York came second. And then we went to Rhode Island, and now we're also in New Jersey. We got a New Jersey distributor during COVID.
That's awesome.
COVID is another huge challenge that I had in the business. It was like, okay, things are they're starting to like take off a little bit. And then COVID happened, and I lost 60% of my business because most of my accounts were in the restaurant industry. And so with most of those accounts being in New York, where we had our biggest footprint, they were all closed. And then when they came back 10, 12 months later, they didn't open up for brunch. All restaurants opened from 4 to 10.
Took time.
It took time to come back 100%. So nobody was doing brunch either. A handful were, and they were still buying because my distributors also sell to retail as well. But that was rough. And what saved me was the fact that I had already figured out how to get this out via e-commerce, right? We developed specific types of packaging for shipping. We did drop testing in a lab. I mean, I had issues before with bottles breaking. I was like, I cannot deal with that if we're going to scale this. And so that same partner that was doing that had a sister company, and they did fulfillment. It was all in Philadelphia. I was able to, drive there and check out the facility. And so they now manage most of our fulfillment.
That's awesome.
And we were able to grow during that period.
That's fantastic. That's awesome stuff you guys are doing. This is great. I mean, I don't have anything left in there.
I still have a little bit.
So as we're wrapping up, we're looking forward, looking past COVID, looking to that camera right there.
Yeah.
Tell the locals, where can they pick up a bottle of Toma?
So if you want to look, we've got the Super Bowl coming this weekend, right? I would go to the Chico's, any one of the Chico and Son stores in Westchester. If you're hearing this in Connecticut, we've got a lot of liquor stores that have Toma available. And just check out our website, drinktoma.com/locations, and you can put your zip code in and find a restaurant or store that it's available in.
Definitely get the Toma. I'm going to buy some Toma. I go to the Chico's in Eastchester, so that's where I'll
The one
be.
in Eastchester is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's brand new.
This is awesome.
Alex, thank you for coming on. Thanks for
thank
making
you guys
us
for
a
having
drink.
me.
Appreciate you. Drink Toma. Subscribe. Like the Vladimirsky TVT News podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.